Hi, this is Kelly. I'd like to take a minute to talk to you about the phonological awareness portion of each Smart Alec lesson. If you haven't seen this portion yet, it can be found on the page that also contains our spelling words. The script for the phonological awareness portion is up here at the top. And what this script does is walk you through different steps of how to have students isolate and manipulate phonemes. This portion is really important to never skip, and furthermore, it's important to always do before you spell or have students do spelling work where they are ordering sounds. The isolation and manipulation of phonemes gets their brain ready to do this kind of work. So although it looks small and looks like something that you may be able to skip over, especially if you're running short on time, I would strongly suggest rather than skipping it, then putting it off to the next day in your lesson plans, because this is really an important piece. What I do for this portion is I have manipulatives that my students can actually touch and move. I just pull things out of math boxes such as Unifix cubes or little tokens or coins, anything that they can manipulate. That's part of our multisensory approach here at Smart Alec Resources. We know research tells us that the more senses students engage at once, the more the information is getting cemented to memory. So I walk through this portion having students actually touch and push blocks or push little coins that represent the sounds. For example, this is from the TCH lesson, which is our second lesson. It's number 2. It's in our closed syllables. TCH makes the sound ch, the same as CH. However, TCH also always follows a short vowel. So that being said, I would ask students to build me the sounds in the word itch using their cubes. Itch. It only has 2 sounds. I'm not using any letters at this time. I'm just having students push forward for me 2 cubes. Itch, itch. Then I'm going to ask them to manipulate those phonemes. And I'm going to say, add a p to the beginning of the word, itch. They're going to reach for a 3rd cube and put that in the front, and then tap and sound, p, itch, pitch. The next thing, according to the script, that I'm going to ask them to do is to add an to the end of the word, pitch. So they would reach for another cube, put that at the end, and p, itch, As they're doing this, I'm watching their work to make sure, I'm watching for a few things. I want to make sure that ch sound is represented by 1 cube, that they know TCH or the ch sound is 1 sound. But I'm also watching to see, can they keep all of this auditory information in their head? If I tell them add an to the sound of, or to the word pitch, can they remember that? And can they organize where that beginning ending sound is? That's a lot to keep track of, especially for our students with dyslexia, and that auditory processing, that auditory memory, that phonemic memory piece is really important and something I'm always keeping a lens on and possibly taking some anecdotal notes or progress monitoring information when I do this portion. So this portion of each lesson is extremely important and something I really want to caution you not to skip over. If you notice, after the phonological awareness portion is an auditory drill. This is another staple to all of our lessons. The auditory drill is going to be the opposite of what you're doing at the top of every lesson with your sound drill. So just a quick review, your sound drill is where you have our sound cards and you're showing the letter you're showing the letter to the student and asking them to make the sound that they see. Now, depending where they are in our curriculum, they may know multiple sounds for a letter. If you're just starting out, they may only know the short sound for the vowels. Personally, I anchor a word and an action to my vowels. So my students would see this and say, a, apple, a, and pretend like they're eating an apple. For the E, we would skywrite the E, Eddie, eh. But the point of the sound drill is that when they see the letter, they can immediately and automatically associate that to a sound. And we go through an entire sound deck. And as they gain skills and as they progress through our curriculum, I add other cards in here that have our different phonograms and different endings. This is done at the top of every single lesson. I start every lesson off with this. So then as we work through our word work and we learn our rules and we look at our syllable types and we look at our vowels and our phonograms, I get to the auditory drill, and this is again the opposite of the sound drill. You can see here we've scripted out the letters that we want you reviewing with your students. The reason this is the opposite of the sound drill is this is having students rely on their auditory information. I tell them the sound, and now they have to give me the letter. So looking at lesson number 2, the TCH lesson, I would tell the student what letter makes the sound I. And either on their paper or on their whiteboard, you would want to look for them to write the letter I. What letter makes the sound E? Same thing, we're looking for them to write the letter E. Again, on their whiteboard, maybe on a blackboard, maybe you're using your glitter paper for this. If you have a student who is working on their fine motor skills and developing handwriting, then I would suggest doing this on paper so you can see that and help them look at the size and shape of their letters and make sure they're staying on the lines, not floating. But lesson 2, you can see for the auditory drill, this is pretty basic. We're having students, what letters make the sound ch? What letters make the sound, and having students make some of these digraphs. As you go through the Smart Aleck curriculum, you will notice that this auditory drill gets much more complex. So for example, this is from, I believe, lesson 22. And you'll notice here, we're asking students, what are 2 ways to make the A sound, a long A sound? What's one way to make it in the middle of the word? What's one way to make it at the end of the word? Sometimes I give those prompts to my students to help them remember there are patterns to a lot of these spellings. What are 4 ways to make the sound? What are 2 ways to make the J sound? And we are asking students to be accountable and remember the letter J or DGE, those 2 ways, as well as to remember there are 4 ways to make the sound. By this point in the curriculum, they have been exposed to this. They've learned it, they've reviewed it, they've had multiple practices with it. So this should be pretty automatic. If it's not, that's a signal to me to go back and maybe do some additional activities from that lesson, or to build in some sentence fluency work that represents these rules. But what I want to leave you with, my most important message, is the phonological awareness and auditory drill are so important. Don't let these be components that you skip over if you're short on time. If you're short on time, table these to the next day for your next lesson, and these definitely have to be a precursor to your spelling work. Especially for our dyslexic students, this is what gets their brain warmed up. It kind of organizes those patterns of phonemes and sounds and letters and gets them ready to approach this successfully. Thank you.